Tell me the facts and I will learn. Tell me the truth and I will believe. But tell me a story will live in my heart forever. Storytelling of stories has such a remarkable impact in our life. For example, why most of our people across the world, across the different languages, continents really like movies, because they have a storyline. They have a seesaw of emotions, which we really like and connect. And around those 2 or 3 hours, we always so hooked up, we get into a different kind of emotions and try to relate those things. So that's why stories are pretty much impactful. You see a lot of conferences and a lot of guests who speak something about their life, or they start with some stories. So those are some of the impactful moments when we talk about stories. Keeping those things in mind, today I have an amazing guest. I heard him in different platforms. He was in our internal event at Microsoft as well, and have seen his TED talk about stories and leadership. So please welcome Majeed Mogharreban. I'm sorry if I'm not saying your right name. Majid, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sarab. It's Majid like magic. That's my stage name to help people remember Majid like magic. And the last name is Mogharreban.
Okay, great. Yeah. That's great. So, bit about yourself, which I have written through. The facts, actually, you already have 5 successful businesses which you own and sold. And that too, within like at the age of 21, and traveled to 24 countries. I mean, that is pretty remarkable in that perspective. And we will try to unwrap that part as well. And I think for past 7 or 8 years, you are mentoring a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs in terms of understanding the life purpose and trying to understand what their vision and mission as far as their organizations or as an individual. And also you have coached and mentored the Olympic gold medalist and football player. So that's also something I'm pretty curious to learn about it. And at the same time, I think you have audience across North American region, Australia, and New Zealand. You've been in different TVs, newspapers, and so on and so forth. So I can see that you are pretty spread across in terms of your presence. And I always ask my guests to start with, was it always like that? Were you born in the way that you would like to become what you are today? Or if you can help us walk through your journey for our guests, like who's Majid? Like magic.
Yes, Sarab. The insight that comes to mind for me to share with you is that I moved a lot when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And I never went to the same school for 2 years in a row until high school. And what that meant is that every year I was the new kid. And as a survival strategy, I needed to find out how do I make friends? How do I get people to like me? I'm the new kid. This allowed me to reinvent myself. In California, where I was born, I changed my name to JJ, and I grew a ponytail. When I went to university, I changed my name back to Majid, and these are symbolic changes for me. And since then, I've had 3 distinct professional identities for myself. The first one was suit and tie, high achieving, short hair, job interviewing, early professional. Then there was a point where I lost the tie. When I became a dad, I dropped the tie and I wore a jacket, no tie. It's like casual professional. And then my third version, I became this spiritual, conscious, speaking philosophy character that I now identify as, and I call myself Majid like magic. And each one has a different costume or a different prop or an artifact. There was a time where I changed my identity from being an entrepreneur to being an artist. And when I became an artist, I bought these blue, thick plastic glasses to put on my face to remind me that I'm an artist. So continuous reinvention has been a theme in my life. And travel and meeting new people has been a theme in my life. And even my face, my look. I could be Latino. I could be Indian. I could be Black. I could be white. The truth is, I'm German, Polish. My mother is German and Polish, and my father is Iranian. So I have a mixed race. I have a mixed home. I have multiple passports. I've traveled to 45 countries. And wherever I go, I want to feel as though I am at home. So I learn the language, I learn the customs, and I'm quickly adapting to new environments. So you read some of my bio. I lived in Australia. I worked with an Australian gold medalist. I worked with an Australian professional football player. I've spoken at the United Nations. I've lived in 5 different countries. And this is what I love, is to experience the breadth and depth of humanity by making myself everyone's brother and connecting to other people's cultures.
That's great. So as you mentioned about having different identities, and you mentioned that you frequently changed schools. So at that time, that also kind of helped you to provide or get into your own identity and then try to reach out to the people. So when you change these identities and having that background at home of different cultures, does that prompted you in the terms of, okay, I'll do something, I'll reach to a point and then move on to explore other things? Is it something which is you are exploratory in your nature going through that, or it will stop somewhere?
Well, I am an explorer, mm-hmm. and there is suffering in seeking. All seeking is suffering. And seeking new experiences and new relationships and new countries with an insatiable appetite does take its toll. And the final destination is within. And it's a place that I have yet to be feeling at home, is in the stillness of not moving. But I know that's my dharma, or my ultimate destination, is to remember that I'm already all the places that I'm wanting to go.
Yeah, so true. So in terms of, like, as you mentioned that you have a couple of business in the past and you ran them and you sold it. What was your experience as a part of your entrepreneur in your life? Like, what are the things you gained which help you to propel to the next part of it? Because there's always learning, right? I mean, I heard some of your videos as well. Everything has some kind of propagation in terms of you learn something from point A and you can apply it to point B, and then maybe you can go to point C. So that phase of your life when you are an entrepreneur and creating all these business, what kind of things you learn which really help you to the next stage of your life?
So my definition of entrepreneurship is solving problems profitably. And so an entrepreneur looks for problems to solve that they can solve with profit. And the reason I turned to entrepreneurship was because I didn't like being told what to do as an employee. My early jobs as a teenager, my job was to get my body in the building before a certain minute on the clock, wearing a uniform with a name tag, and keep my body there until a certain minute on the clock, and just keep my boss happy and not get fired. I wasn't a very great employee, because you see my approach to employment is like, just get yourself there and stay there until you have to stay. I didn't feel inspired by any of the work that I was doing. But what entrepreneurship offered me is the opportunity to create wealth and freedom. because I connected at the time freedom with wealth, meaning like if I can have so much money, then I can do whatever I want and I can live wherever I want and I can travel wherever I want. And I didn't see that opportunity through employment in my early days as a teenager. So I later realized that entrepreneurship is also a way to be creative, a way to create. You can consider your business a work of art. You can consider it your meaningful contribution to humanity. I know that you can also do that through the vehicle of employment and as an employee. But I found I loved the freedom of creative freedom through entrepreneurship. So what I learned that the number one skill as an entrepreneur for me is sales. And in employment organizations, that same skill is called leadership. Because leadership is the application of communication and psychology knowledge. When you understand how communication works, when you understand how psychology works, and you apply both, that is leadership within an organization. For me, as an entrepreneur, sales is the process of helping people make the decision to make a purchase by applying communication skills, listening more than speaking, and psychology skills, understanding that when they're saying yes to a purchase, they're saying yes to a better future that they can see in their mind. So once I learned how to sell, then the question became, what do I want to sell? In my 5 businesses, I was selling snow cones, which is sugar and water and Kool-Aid in a cup with a spoon and a napkin. But what am I really selling is I'm selling enjoying a summer day, creating beautiful memories with friends, $3 at a time, $3 cups of snow cone, right? And I was selling computer hard drives because I found, I was buying computer hard drives myself and realizing I could find them really cheap over here and sell them more expensive over there. So I was doing that price arbitrage business. So each of these opportunities I found, I saw a problem, I saw a customer, I found a way to reach the customer. Now what I sell is my personal services as a consultant, speaker, and coach. And the people who hire me, they don't want a consultant, they don't want a speaker, and they don't want a coach. They want their problem solved. So I help them identify and articulate their problem in a way that they've never had so much clarity around their own problem. Mm-hmm. And then I show them and demonstrate how they can solve that problem with my help. And then I ask them, would you like that future vision of the problem solved with my support? And if it's a yes, then they can make an investment in getting that result.
That's great. So as you mentioned about your past, so basically you were not selling a commodity. You were kind of helping us or helping them to learn the vision or experience of those products. Like what would the overall experience looks like. And that is something which tried to attract a lot of people to buy those products or commodity as per what you mentioned. And now you are, as you mentioned, that you are in the business where you are helping people to achieve their purpose in their life, for example. So what are the difficult things from you have seen, experience? You may have different people from different walks of life. So for example, coaching or mentoring a professional athlete versus coaching or mentoring a person who is totally in the corporate world, who is trying to make a difference in front of the screen versus the person who is an athlete, who is really into the field, a lot of physical and mental work from their perspective as well. So how does that work? I mean, what's your perspective around coaching those different people from different walks of life?
High achievers are high achievers. They have their drive from something that happened in their youth. It may be a traumatic response, their achievement. But I'll tell you what I learned from coaching an Olympic gold medal sprinter. And this is a principle that I remind myself, and that is your strength is your weakness. And this Olympic sprinter was so good at sprinting, physically and metaphorically, meaning she would go hard and she would get so much done and then be totally burnt out. And she needed to learn how to become a marathon runner. She needed to learn how to play the long game of business, because she would make a bunch of money and then not know what to do or not have a long-term vision. And she would get a bunch of stuff done and then need to take a break because she's burnt out. So we looked at what her strength was and what's the downside. So we did something called the SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I think this is, anybody, as their personal awareness increases, you see your strengths, you play to your strengths, but you also mitigate the weaknesses. You have strategies in place. Those strategies might be partnering. A leader in an organization, for example, if they're, let's just say, really good with people, they love meetings and they love presentations and they love shaking hands. But when it comes to analytical, deep thinking work, like spending some time with a spreadsheet, for example, they just want to avoid it. Well, it's not always the best strategy to say, let's focus on your weakness and improve that skill. It might be better to say, who can replace that weakness for you, or who can we get on this team to mitigate some of the downsides of your weakness. So, I've worked with CEOs who are really great at sales. They just want to talk to customers, and that's great. I think a CEO's number one job is to keep the sales going, because no sales, no business.
Yep.
But they were really bad at doing the management, which was the tracking and the measuring. So instead of developing that skill in them, we had built the right team around them so that those weaknesses are mitigated. So that's what I've learned working with business owners and high performers, is that their strength is their weakness. So look at the flip side of the strength and how do we mitigate against that, either by putting the right people in place or the right processes in place.
Perfect. So basically just having a conversation, understand why they're looking for what they're looking, and then try to give them solution based on their life circumstances. So as you mentioned, that sometimes a lot of folks, which includes me as well, would like to do a lot of work by ourselves because we are so comfortable, as you mentioned, right? Even on a CEO level, you give the example of he or she would be good in sales, but they would like to do all the things by themselves most of the time because they know how they can do those things. And there would be a certain level of trust deficit, delegating a certain task. So those are some of the things most of my colleagues, or I've seen people, of letting go of certain tasks out there. So as a coach, what's your perspective to help those folks who are like burnout because of they're doing too much things, priorities everywhere, and at the same time, they have a bit of a trust deficit for other people around them?
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. Trust deficit, and the inability to delegate is a need to control, and it's a lack of trust. And so it's also a huge ceiling on leadership. It's a huge ceiling on impact. Is if you need to do everything yourself, you're going to be quite limited. And so the way people go to increase their output is, like you said, they just burn more. They, go harder. They start earlier. They stay later. They work on the weekend. That, you know how that ends. It ends in burnout. So there are phases of delegation. The first phase is watch me do it. The second phase is you do it and I'll watch you. The third phase is you do it, I won't watch you, but report to me. And the final phase is I trust your decisions. So the question is, how do you get to I trust your decisions? The answer is values. How do we make decisions? How do we know, should we spend more time on this to increase the quality, or should we do this faster to increase the speed? Should we spend more money on this to get more people on the job? Or should we do this really cost effectively? The way you answer those questions is you say, well, what's really important to me? Or what's really important to this team or to this organization? Those are values. When values are clearly communicated and behaviors and actions and decisions are made based on values, then when you have a culture aligned to the values, people tend to make the quote unquote right decisions more often because they're aware of what our values are as a culture. So this is why one of the leadership's most important job is to define and monitor and maintain the culture by noticing when decisions are made that align to the culture and say, that's good, that was right, here's why that was right, here's why that was good. And when decisions are made that are not aligned to the culture, you say, here's how we could have done it differently, here's how we can do it next time. And making it feel safe to make mistakes that can be corrected, and getting people to desire to make mistakes that are in alignment to values. And so how do we communicate values? We communicate it through our actions. We communicate it through writing our values down, and we communicate it through stories that become legend. And culture, my definition of culture is the way we do things around here. So that's how we delegate, is we choose the culture and keep people aligned to the culture. Now, one of the ways to get buy-in from an individual into the corporate culture is to help them identify what their own values are as an individual that come from childhood, that come from church, they come from upbringing, and you help them identify what their actual personal values are, and then see how those are connected to and aligned with the organization's values.
That's great. So the next follow-up question would be, how do I define my values? Or what is my life philosophy? Which I think when I talk in a different set of conversations, people say, yeah, it's good. It looks good. It sounds good. But okay, what is the next step? I mean, how do I define what's my life philosophy? I think you must be coming across these questions a lot as a coach. People might ask, like, I'm not sure. So what's your advice to people who are still trying to work and identify what's their value, life philosophies, or purpose in their life?
Yeah, there's two exercises I recommend for values identification. And one of them is in my first book called Winning at Life, which has this principle of define your values so that you can make decisions that are aligned to your values. And it's quite simple. There is a full sheet of paper with words that are values. Okay. Integrity, excellence, creativity, family. These are all values words. Okay. Now you can either get my book, Winning at Life, or you can just Google the phrase list of values and print out a sheet of paper if you can. Okay. Then the first thing you do is circle all of the values that are important to you. You might circle about half of the words on the page. Okay. Then you say, if I could only keep 5 of the words that I've circled, which 5 would I keep? And then you identify those 5. Then you say, if I could only keep 4 of these last 5, which one would I eliminate? And the one that you eliminate, you write a number 5 next to it. Now you got 4 left. You say, if I could only keep 3 out of these 4, which one would I eliminate? You eliminate one, you write a little 4 next to it. And if you got 3 left, if I could only keep 2 out of these 3, which one would I eliminate? You write a little 3 next to it, and so on until you get to 2 and 1. Now you have your top 5 values in order. That's one way to do it. There's another exercise that's a little bit more robust. If you search John DeMartini, and DeMartini is DiMartini, John DeMartini, values exercise. In about 5 or 10 minutes on a computer, you'll go through an exercise that asks you questions like, what are the activities that you do? And what are the things that you have displayed in your home? And, what's important to you? How do you spend your time? And all of those are clues as to your values, what's important to you. Some people, for example, it's Friday afternoon, they're ready to enjoy themselves. They want to go out and be with people. Some people can't leave their house until it's perfectly clean. One person calls the other person crazy. But it's just that they have different values. So one of the insights we need to recognize is that I have these lenses on that I see the world with that I might not even be aware that my lenses are different from other people's lenses. People's default assumption is that everyone thinks like me. So that means everyone has values like me, which is why when someone has a very different behavior, we think they're crazy. They're not crazy. They just have different values. And one of the marks of a good leader is to be able to recognize that people have different values and speak to them in a way that's aligned to their values, the one who you're speaking to, not just your own values. So that's how we identify our own values. Now, in terms of life philosophy and life purpose, I think it can be very simply stated that one's life purpose is what they choose it to be. And people who aren't making decisions and they're going in a bunch of different directions and they don't know who they are, it's because they haven't chosen their life's purpose. Mine is to have fun and travel and be a beacon of fun and adventure for other people. I used to be ashamed or felt guilty about that because it's not like change the world and make the world a better place and leave my mark on humanity and help the orphans with the hospitals and I really do prioritize fun and travel. And I've inspired other people to do the same thing. And I think I'm doing my work in the world to have that as my philosophy and mission. One of my philosophies, clearly and simply communicated, is fun first. And I came up with this principle when I had a friend of mine. He was really not liking his work. He was having a hard time working, hard time motivating himself, hard time making money. And he kept on telling himself, once I'm done with my work and once I get my money, then I get to have fun. And I just want to have fun. And he put this big block in the way. I got to make this money. I got to do this work before I have fun. And I said to him, why don't you just have fun first? Then at least the goal is achieved of having the fun. And so he started having fun first. And now it was easy for him to do his work and easy for him to make his money. And he got all the results that he wanted by having fun first. Now, that principle is counterintuitive and goes up against a lot of people's belief, which is that fun needs to be earned through hard work. That's the belief that he was operating from. So I found some of these principles and ways of living that have helped me make choices that align to my values.
That's great, actually. I think you said pretty powerful here about there are a lot of people, they procrastinate. Most of the time, people know what they want. They just try to kind of tie up to the social norms, or maybe a fear is one of the factor that if I go something out of the things which, like, for example, if I want to do a job and I have to do some fun, maybe in traveling or maybe pursuing our hobbies, which really gives me a true joy. That is something I keep on procrastinating, as you rightly mentioned, that, oh, let me just complete this and then I'll do that. And sometimes that the day which you are envisioning, sometimes in some people's life, it never comes. And sometimes if they come, it just goes like that. I mean, just in seconds, like for 2 or 3 days. For example, in the US right now, the long weekend is coming. So after 3 days, people would be like, oh, I wish I would have stayed longer for this. So which means that, yeah, so they are really struggling to what they're doing, or they are unable to kind of having that strike a right balance. So that is so important to have the purpose, the value in their life. And that should be a center of gravity of all the decisions what you take, which would be really helpful. That's great. So let's go towards the end part of our conversation here. So you mentioned about the book Winning at Life. So what's this book all about? Who will get the most benefit out of it, and where people can find this book?
Okay. So Winning at Life was the title of my book that I co-authored with one of my first mentors, who developed a 12-step process for achievement in life. And the first 6 steps are about goal setting, and the final 6 steps are about goal achievement. And I called it Winning at Life because at the age of 23, when I was publishing this book, I wanted to bring it to students, high school and college and university students. And I believed at that time that winning at life was a matter of achieving goals. Now in my elder wisdom, I have a different definition of winning at life, which is enjoying the present moment. You know, we talked about the person on the long weekend who wants the long weekend to last longer. You know, you can't hold on to the long weekend. The long weekend ends. But the true winning is enjoying the next day and the next moment. And back to my philosophy of having fun, I had a recent revelation. I was on a Zoom call and I was not having fun, and I did not want to be there. But I chose to be there because I committed to be there. But at the end, I was angry because I felt like for 2 hours I was not having fun, and I could have been having fun, but I wasn't having fun. And here was the insight for me. Having fun is always available to me because I get to make things fun. And so enjoying something is always available to you because you get to enjoy it. And the true winning at life is enjoying and allowing and accepting this present moment. All suffering happens when you say, I want to be at this other place. I want to be in this other time. I want to be in that long weekend I had last weekend. Or I want to be in the vacation I have coming next week. And I don't want to be here. So to enjoy and appreciate the present moment, and one of the ways to do that is the Stoic philosophy, memento mori, which means remember that you're going to die. Remember death. Makes everything else more valuable. Remember death. So how to get the copy of Winning at Life? It's actually no longer available in print, but you can email me and I'll send it to you. So you can email me at Majeed@expertspeaker.com. It's MAJEED at expertspeaker.com. That's EXPERTSPEAKER.com.
Perfect. We'll try to put all this information in the show notes. So if you are viewing that, you can reach out to Majid on that, and that part. So I think you said beautifully about, you have to enjoy the present moment. And if you create an environment and instead of looking elsewhere, try to look within and see how you can make yourself happy. And also it's I was reading through Oprah Winfrey, and she mentioned that unless you are not full by yourself, you cannot give that happiness or joy to other people because you're struggling by yourself as well. So first, make sure that you're happy. So that being said, Majid, thank you so much for your time on this. And all the best for your future endeavors. And one last thing, actually, I forgot. If anyone would like to reach out to you for professional assistance, what is the best medium to reach out to you?
Email's great. Majid@expertspeaker.com. I help leaders with public speaking skills. I help entrepreneurs with sales and storytelling. If you'd like me to facilitate a workshop or facilitate a retreat or coach with you one-on-one, best way is email me, tell me a little bit about your situation, and we'll set up a call.
That's great. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Saurabh.